Something massive is fracturing the absolute foundation of professional golf right now. A loophole so glaring, so fundamentally broken, that the entire concept of fair play is currently being questioned. This is not a rumor about a bad call. This is an institutional failure playing out in real time on the biggest stage imaginable, exposing a set of regulations that protect the privileged while punishing the honest. The system is openly collapsing. Have you ever watched a broadcast and realized you were witnessing something fundamentally unfair, but completely legal? Imagine watching a competitor hit a shot so completely unplayable that under any normal circumstance, the tournament is over. You know the penalty. The broadcasters know the penalty. The entire gallery knows exactly what is supposed to happen next. Now imagine watching that same competitor simply point to a technicality, bypass the penalty entirely, and walk away with a pristine lie. That is what we are talking about today. The stakes here are not just about one errant swing or one bad hole. The stakes are about the integrity of the sport itself. When the rulebook stops protecting the game and starts acting as a get-out-of-jail-free card for the most powerful players on earth, you no longer have a competition. You have a legal negotiation. But this specific negotiation did not involve an unknown rookie. It involved the #1 player in the world, Scottie Scheffler. At the 2026 Open Championship at Royal Birkdale, Sheffler stepped onto the tee of the demanding 17th hole and hit a shot that sailed completely off the map. It disappeared entirely into a massive hospitality structure. By the letter of Rule 17.1d, that is a lost ball. That requires a penalty drop. That changes the entire momentum of a major championship. Scheffler never found the golf ball. Yet, because of a highly specific clause regarding temporary immovable objects, known as the TIO rule, Scheffler was spared. The known or virtually certain clause allowed him to take a free drop. A free drop for a ball that was never recovered. He wedged it to exactly 10 feet. He saved his score. And he did it entirely within the rules. And that ruling sparked a reaction that nobody saw coming. Because the loudest voice tearing into the absurdity of that free drop was not a rival player, and it was not a furious fan. The loudest voice was Scheffler himself. We will get to exactly what he said about his own drop in a second. But first, you have to understand how he framed the entire culture of the locker room. While defending Bryson DeChambeau against a separate rules accusation earlier that same week, Scheffler unleashed a critique that indicted the entire sport. He stated clearly that modern players are pushing it a little bit further than they should. Scheffler did not soften the blow. He did not hide behind PR statements. He directly called out the environment where players hunt for technicalities instead of accepting the consequences of their bad shots. He said the game desperately needs to get back to the traditions. And then, addressing his own situation on the 17th hole at Birkdale, Scheffler delivered the exact quote that turned a rules debate into a full-blown scandal. Speaking directly about taking that TIO free drop, he admitted, "It's not something I'm proud of." The #1 player on earth, holding a major championship trophy, confessing on record that the ruling he benefited from felt fundamentally wrong. The accumulation of these moments is staggering. DeChambeau getting questioned. Scheffler receiving a miraculous free drop. Scheffler turning around and stating that the rules of the game need to be policed more strictly. It is a stunning sequence of events. You have the greatest golfer alive openly admitting that the current regulatory structure allows players to escape punishment. He is essentially begging the governing bodies to stop giving him and his peers so much leniency. The players know the TIO rule is a loophole. The broadcasters know it is a loophole. And now, the entire world knows exactly how easily it can be exploited on the 17th hole of a major championship. When a player hits a ball into a hospitality tent, cannot physically locate it, and still manages to walk away with a clean lie and a 10-foot putt for birdie, the illusion of a level playing field shatters. The accumulation of these quotes and these actions forms a devastating picture of a sport that has lost control of its own boundaries. If this pattern of exploitation continues, the very fabric of professional golf will unravel, which brings us directly to the institution that allowed this to happen, the Rules Committee. The PGA Tour and the governing bodies are now caught in a trap of their own making. The Rules Committee stood on that 17th hole at Royal Birkdale, looked at a missing golf ball, and actively chose to grant relief under the TIO clause rather than enforcing a strict lost ball. They are the ones who authored the known or virtually certain standard. They are the ones who deploy officials to rubber stamp these drops. The committee was designed to protect the field, but instead, they have created a culture of regulatory negotiation. If the top players are publicly demanding to be policed more strictly, it means the police have completely abandoned their posts. The antagonist here is not a rogue player looking for an edge. The antagonist is the bureaucratic machine that writes a rulebook so bloated and so ambiguous that a ball lost in a grandstand becomes a strategic advantage rather than a catastrophic error. The Rules Committee is now facing a crisis of legitimacy. They cannot simply ignore the #1 player in the world calling out their leniency. They are the architects of the loophole. To understand how we arrived at this breaking point, we have to look away from Royal Birkdale and look back at the history of the rulebook itself. Decades ago, a lost ball was a lost ball. The game was played strictly as it lay. But as tournaments grew in scale, so did the infrastructure. Massive grandstands, sprawling corporate hospitality tents, and giant camera towers became permanent fixtures of every major championship. The TIO rule was originally introduced as a basic matter of fairness. If a temporary grandstand blocked your shot, you deserved relief, because that grandstand was not a natural part of the golf course. It was a logical, necessary addition. But over the years, the interpretation of that rule mutated. It shifted from a basic fairness protection into a strategic safety net. Players realized that aiming toward a grandstand was actually safer than aiming toward deep rough or water. If you miss, the grandstand catches the ball, and the TIO rule grants you a free, clean drop. What started as a shield evolved into a weapon. The history of golf is filled with players testing the limits, but never before has the regulatory structure so actively rewarded the worst shots with the best outcomes. And that brings us right back to the outrage currently echoing through the sport. Scottie Scheffler's controversial free drop on the 17th hole at Royal Birkdale exposed a massive loophole in the TIO rule, forcing Sheffler himself to publicly demand that the Rules Committee police players more strictly. The illusion is gone. We watched it happen. We heard the confession. The highest-ranked player in the world stood in front of the microphones, admitted he was not proud of the drop, and told the governing bodies to do their jobs. When the players themselves are calling out the absurdity of the system is undeniably broken. This is no longer just a debate about one ruling on one hole. This is a fundamental crisis of integrity, exposing a set of regulations that protect the privileged while punishing the honest. So, will the governing bodies actually listen, or will they continue to let the biggest stars dictate the terms of engagement? We do not know exactly how they will rewrite the rulebook, but we do know their first massive test is rapidly approaching. The FedEx Cup Playoffs begin in August 2026. The infrastructure will be massive. The grandstands will be everywhere. The pressure will be immense. The Rules Committee is going to be marching onto those properties, knowing that every single fan, every single broadcaster, and every single player in the locker room is watching their every move. The entire golf world is waiting to see if an official will finally stand over a lost ball and enforce the actual penalty, or if they will cave to the pressure and grant another miraculous drop. The countdown to the playoffs has started. The spotlight is locked on the committee. Will they finally draw a hard line, or will the loophole strike again?